Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Low Carb Lifestyle Hub. What a treat I have for you all today. I am here with these special people who are all the admins of the Low Carb Melbourne Facebook group, and I'm so excited to introduce you to them all and share with you why they are so awesome and the fantastic knowledge they bring to the low carb space. So thank you everybody for being here tonight. It was a bit of an effort organising everyone, but we did it. So I'm going to start by introducing each of you to everybody. So Dr. Avi Charlton, can we start with you? Do you want to just share a little bit about you and what brought you into the low carb space?
Hi, I am Dr. Avi Charlton. So my journey mainly started with my personal journey. About 4 or 5 years ago, I started exercising, and then I wanted to lose some weight. Then I joined the gym, and there was a 8-week challenge. So I thought, I'll challenge myself and join the program. And the trainer actually basically given me a low carb meal plan. So not really a meal plan, but a low carb advice. So fast forward, I have got interested into this low carb nutrition. Then I read lots of books, and then got really interested and started putting myself out that I want to be a low carb doctor. I did a low carb doctor course and started an Instagram, Facebook, and started to call myself a low carb doctor. And having more and more education about this, it really works, and it's good science. And I started to help my patients. I'm a GP. I have been a GP practicing in the suburbs of Melbourne for 15 years, but it's about the last 3 years that I have learned this to help people with metabolic syndrome, with insulin resistance, and even general health, people getting rid of carbohydrates, not eating sugar, and that will really make them feel better, lose weight, gain health, and it's really worked. So in the last 2 years, I have started to incorporate low carb medicine into my general practice. About 18 months ago, actually 2 years ago, I connected with Tracey and was one of the speakers at the Low Carb Lifestyle Long Weekend. And that's all started the journey of connecting with all the low carb people. About 18 months ago, we started this group called Low Carb Melbourne. And Tracey asked me to become one of the admins, and I said, yeah, sure, that'll be good fun. And it has turned out to be a very enjoyable experience to build a community of low carb Melbourne and connecting with lots and lots of low carb people. And we do lots of meetups once a month, or once even more often than that sometimes. We go and have lunch, and we make some new friends, and some people come and see me as a doctor. Sometimes I can help, sometimes I give some advice, and overall I've connected with lots of people and learned a lot more things myself. And it's a very rewarding experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm so glad you're part of the team, Avi. I just was interested to know, so obviously you felt this yourself, you've done this all yourself, and once you felt, what you have in terms of your own health, it was kind of, was it an easy decision for you to bring it into your GP practice, or was that quite difficult for you?
It was an easy decision to bring it into the practice because I know it works and I know this is the science, but practically it was quite difficult because there's the patients was hard to convince. Lots of patients don't want to do it, and it's hard to change the mindsets of people. And other doctors in the clinic don't know anything about it. They do different practices, they do different blood tests, and then I am starting to do my own low carb things. And so there's difficulties, but we're managing, and I'm starting to influence the other doctors. And some of them are going low carb as well, or they want to go low carb too. And some of them have had some success as well.
Great. That's awesome. Thanks, Avi. Declan, who is Declan Woods?
G'day, I'm Declan. I am a former carb addict. I think like a few of us here were in the past. And now the reason why I'm in the low carb space personally is I want to share my passion for cooking with others and help them understand that there is a way of incorporating low carb, healthy cooking into your lifestyle and actually making the time to cook. And making healthy meals for yourself. So my passion is I want to keep training myself and become a low carb coach, like you guys, which is kind of what I'm aiming for personally. But my personal journey is what took myself towards this direction. I was a big time carb lover as a teenager. I was the kid playing loads of sport, but then coming home to eating bowls of cereal covered in honey, toast with Nutella, and thinking it was healthy, and fueling all my sport with Gatorade, Powerade, thinking I was doing the right thing, hydrating myself. So I was loading sugar into my body constantly as a teenager. Then when I went to university, I added to that mix energy drinks and alcohol, which wasn't great for my body. And I was masking it all with fitness, doing a lot of running at the time. And it all caught up to me when I went from working in a very active job to a very sedentary job. I ended up putting on a lot of weight, and I went from about 62 kilos to about 78 in the space of 18 months. And realized I needed to do something about it. I started investigating some health summits, and one of them was called the Swift Summit. And there was a low carb dietitian there that did a lecture, and I took a very strong interest in it and started reading more about her and low carb cooking, and started collecting cookbooks, as you can see behind me. And from there, they had a few more conferences a couple of years later, and I actually met Damon Gamow and David Gillespie. Damon, you may recognize from that sugar film, which was a really big insight for me to learn more about the harms of sugar. And then Peter Bruckner actually came on to one of the conferences and did a lecture about low carb again. So at that point, I was learning more about low carb, and I'd learned about low carb down under too, but I hadn't actually taken the time to incorporate the healthy eating myself, and needed to really focus on my own mental health and my physical health too. So over time, I started attending more online lectures, trying to learn as much as I possibly could. And I went to I attended virtually the Low Carb Canberra meeting, and through that decided I need to really implement this in my own lifestyle. I lost all the weight, started strength training, and I met my GP through the Low Carb Canberra group, which is now Dr. Avi Charlton, who's actually with us today in the Low Carb Melbourne admin team. You guys created the Low Carb team, and now I've become an admin and learning to be a health coach. So that's my journey in a nutshell.
That was awesome, Declan. I think so many people will resonate with your story there, particularly the eating the cereal. You know, that's what we think, isn't it? It doesn't matter what we eat because we can run it off, and you know, it's such a myth. You know, well, Iron Man food, right? Nutrigrain, hey, you know, and Wheat Bix, and with the cricket team and all that. So it's so understandable, but when you see what it's doing and realize actually there's a better way, it's very cool. Thanks so much, Declan. Gillian, hello.
Hi. So just briefly, I am a clinical nutritionist and health coach, but I haven't always been. And I think like so many of us, it's our professional journey and our personal journey. And certainly for me, this has gone in parallel. I wasn't a super well child. I had a lot of upper respiratory things, and I wasn't a super well or super sporty teenager. So I sort of joined this community from the perspective, and there's many of us, because 1 in 2 Australian adults is living with a chronic disease. So I come from the part of low carb of having to completely overhaul my health, because I had slid into a place where I was class 2 morbidly obese, which is very overweight. I was always sick, I was always tired, and I was clinically depressed. So, it's not a really wonderful way to live your life. And then I got to the sort of point in my mid-30s, which is late-ish, and Avi will confirm that you are elderly prima gravida when you have your first child after the age of 35. So that was my first and last child. And my health was still going downhill. And by my late 30s, I had a cardiologist, and in my early 40s, I was diagnosed with osteoporosis. So living with stuff, and I think I had investigated other complementary medicines, because orthodox medicine just didn't have that much for me. It's like there's got to be a missing link, and I was so fortunate to end up with an integrative GP who looked at my health from a much more functional perspective and said, we've got to get you off antibiotics. I was having probably at least between 6 and 10 courses of antibiotics per year. And I had chronic sinusitis. And those of you out there who are sinusitis sufferers know that it is suffering. It's not nice. And that was really the battle for my immune system of really, this cycle of the antibiotics is like, just nuclear wipeout of your gut microbiome. And so much of our immune system relies on having this healthy microbiome. And it was rebuilding that and rebuilding my health. And I did go through another complementary medicine strategy, which actually just didn't work for me. And it was traditional Chinese medicine, and apparently I have a cool damp problem. And I was basically put on a gruel-based diet. And I got to the end of, the phase where it's sort of like, okay, we're introducing this should work. And it just didn't. I felt just as awful. And I thought, right, this is not working for me. And by that stage, I'd been off wheat for a long time, since my late teens. And I realized that dairy really wasn't working for me either. And I started hearing about this paleo thing. And I thought, well, I'm already off wheat and I'm already off dairy. I'm like 80% of the way there. And it took a couple of goes. I tried paleo, and I didn't think that much of it until I sort of slid out of paleo when I was on holiday. And then I realized that pain was also my constant companion, both in the form of headaches, migraines, and just general body pain. So it's like, wow, this is huge. And it was through this process that I saw that, food is medicine, and it's so powerful. And I think there's a lot of the discourse out there talks about food as energy. And this is this energy balance concept that, I think all of us have concerns about, that it's just eat less, move more, because it's just about energy. And theoretically, if it was just about energy, it wouldn't matter if we lived on donuts, but it does. And I think anyone who's done that experiment of having that sort of pretty junky inputs is you can only sustain that for so long. And if you're young and you're lucky and you're sort of your pool of nutrients in your body and your base level of health was good, which mine wasn't, if one does have a good base of health, then you can sustain that for longer. So I'd been working in corporate communications and marketing, and I think just this I think for so many of us, it's actually almost like a revelation of going, wow, there's this whole other world out there where, you know, we can heal ourselves. And this has sort of led me, I guess I'm really passionate about helping people to be critical consumers of health information and learning to determine, you know, is this coming from a marketer, or is this coming from a scientist, or is this coming from a scientist paid by marketers? So, and I think there's no shortage of information, but what we really need to do is be discriminating about the source of information and what it's trying to tell us.
Yeah. I mean, and that makes it so hard. And I think that's part of the problem. You know, people just, there's so much noise out there and people find it so difficult to decipher. But I think, you know, when you do take the time, you know, to become a critical thinker, like, you know, I have to say, you know, you are my go-to, Gillian. You know, your information, your knowledge is just phenomenal about everything nutrition but I guess that stems really from, you know, your journey and your passion to really understand what's going on in your own body, which makes you the, you know, the fantastic nutritionist and coach that you are. So I think it's so great that we are privileged to your brain and everything that you know. But I think, you know, as you say, you can decipher. I think if you look at everything with a critical eye, you know, it just takes a little bit of time to scratch the surface to really look behind what are they saying, what they're saying. I mean, definitely never read anything on the front of the pack, right? You know, I mean, that's just glitz and designed to grab your attention. But you know, it takes a little bit of practice, but we can get there, can't we?
Absolutely. And I think this is where it's one of the beautiful things about our low carb Melbourne community is that we support each other. And I'd really like to believe that, you know, unless somebody is going on some sugar-fueled downward spiral, which is a cry for help and a call for support, which hopefully people will gather around. But, you know, generally it's non-judgmental and people come with a question because we're all in different places in our journey. We all come from a different place in our health, even just in that, you know, the mental journey of, I can remember the first time it was a neighbour was doing effectively low carb and she was telling me she ate strawberries and cream for breakfast. Like, whoa, that's freaky. You know, that it sounded so decadent. It's like, no, that can't be right. Because, you know, if it's healthy, it's got to be miserable.
You got to be starving all the time
and deprived.
Deprived. That's it. Yeah. And I think you're right. I think that, you know, the reason why we've all connected and why I love you all so much is just that we all bring such a heart and a, you know, real non-judgmental approach to what you do. And we are also different. When, you know, the next question that I want to get into when we've all introduced ourselves is that difference, because I think we fall into low carb, many people looking for this one size fits all. And I think that sets people up, you know, not necessarily in the best way. So it'll be fantastic to hear how everybody has made this work for themselves. But moving on to Love and LCHF, who of course is the infamous Darren Graham.
Infamous, yes. I've become a little bit like that, haven't I? So my journey virtually started, you know, I was born a fat kid. So there we go. That's 53 years ago in a nutshell. So no, I was born into a family that, you know, that loves their food and loves their stuff. And, you know, the auntie cooked the pavlova at the Christmas dinner or something like that. And my mum made caramel pies, and she used to boil the caramel up for 4 hours or whatever like that, you know. So it's come from that sort of thing. And if you didn't eat it, you know, you were offending your auntie or your mum, you know, that's the sort of stuff. So that was the loving family I went into. But what, you know, like I said, 47 years of yo-yo dieting up and down. I used to umpire AFL in Queensland. I was going to be on an AFL goal umpires list. I was going to be listed as an AFL umpire. So, you know, I was fit. I used to be a Northern Territory track junior and road cycling champion when I was a kid. So I represented the Northern Territory for athletics in high school, so I was selected to go to Perth for discus and stuff. I played when I was a kid in Victoria. When we moved to Victoria, I won under 10s, under 12 AFL grand finals. So there was no shortage of being fit or being a fat fit type thing and doing the stuff. But it was like you were saying before, it was nothing to wake up and have 8 Weet-Bix in the morning because Brett Lee or someone told me to. With my glass of Milo and my 2 scoops of Milo because the Milo made the milk better. It was more nutritional with the Milo in the milk than it was without the Milo. So I believe that. And then fast forward, it gets to the stage as you get older and you have a sports injury, and I done a tear on my right knee umpiring, and then you put weight on and then you take it off, and then you start this and you start that, and you do like Herbalife, and you do the Weight Watchers, and you do the I was dragged to Weight Watchers when I was at school in year 9, 10 and 11, 9, 10 and 11, and you're there on a Wednesday night going back to your school after hours, sitting in front of 15, 20 ladies and whatever like that as a 15-year-old, 16-year-old kid. So it was very demeaning back then, and it was just sort of a pushback. So henceforward, I later on in life I put the weight back on. I wasn't doing anymore, got married, had children, so you don't have that spare time to go and do that ride or that walk or that thing that helps you along the way. And then find a high pressure job because you've got to make more money and that sort of stuff. So it was just a vicious cycle in the end. Fast forward to a job that one I wasn't happy about or happy with, and I was getting bullied at work, and I was putting on weight, and it was a horrendous situation. But I was working 60, 70-hour weeks just to try and make, because I feel I was inadequate and stuff like that. It was just a self-fulfilling prophecy, as in you're inadequate, so you're doing more, so then you're not eating properly, and then so I ballooned and I ballooned and I ballooned, and I got out to over 200 kilos. So going from someone that was pretty fit, could compete, and do what I wanted in that sense, to then put on that much weight, it was pretty bad. So I went to Bali to a friend's wedding, and I had to get a shirt made up from the tailors in Bali, and because I couldn't buy a shirt anywhere, so I had to get a shirt for the wedding made up. And then I had to fly from Bali to Thailand with the family and I couldn't fit in the seat. And well, I sat in the seat, but it was pretty tight. It was really tight and stuff like that. So, and funny enough, a friend of mine who's in Thailand at holidays, it was the first one when I sat down and I was having a beer with him. I hadn't caught up with him for about a year. He just said to me, he said, "Mate, you look terrible." He said, "I'm really concerned about you." So he was the first person that could really just see where I was and what I was doing. And he said, "Have you tried low carb?" And I said, "Oh, look, never heard of it. What is it?" I've tried everything else. And funny enough, I was actually going down the next day to buy some I used to buy diet tablets called Reduce off my tailor in Thailand. So I go to my Indian tailor, get my suits made or a shirt made for work and pants made for work, and I'd buy diet tablets off him. So when he delivered the shirt, I get diet tablets delivered from Thailand, in Thailand from India. So didn't know what was in them, but he told me they worked. So at this time, I was trying anything. And so meanwhile, I was on 10 other medications. So block your ears, Gillian. I could have been on any sort of combination of what was affecting what was doing something to something else. So the 10 different medications, and then I was going to chuck in these reduced tablets from Thailand. So, I was lucky it didn't give me a heart attack or something, or a stroke there and then on the spot. It's just a miracle in the long run. So he told me about it, and that was in November, and thought nothing about it, and then came back to Melbourne, and then work just got out of control. And I was driving home one day. It was just a catalyst. And I was driving home, and as I was driving home, I was looking for a big enough truck to drive into. It just came to that. It was like, I couldn't see a way out of it. After 47 years of trying this and that, I couldn't see a way out of it. The only way I could see out of it was through a truck. So I had the foresight to ring a friend. I rang the friend, and he talked me home, and that was it. So then I got off work, I mentioned my mate in Thailand. I said, what's this low carb stuff? So he put me onto the dietdoctor.com, and I started with 2 weeks menu plan from the dietdoctor.com. I lost about 6 to 7 kilos in those first 2 weeks. You know, the body was pretty broken, and I had a lot to lose. So don't think that's going to happen to everybody. And then after the 2 weeks, I said, oh, well, what do I do now? And I said, well, I'll just do them again. So I did the menu again for the 2 weeks, the cottage pies with the cauliflower topping and the hamburgers. And I thought, this is fantastic. I'm not having to count or do anything. And so in the first month, I lost 9 kilos, and I thought it was magic. And I thought it was hoodoo or witch doctory or some sort of thing, and I just couldn't believe it. So that's when I started looking it up and started learning the science myself. Found 2 keto dudes, listened to podcasts, and started listening and finding from there. So that's how my journey started. And 6 months later, I'd lost about 35 kilos in that time. Was feeling great. My mental health had improved so much, and I was virtually off all my medications. I think I was only on 1 medication 6 months later out of 10. And that went about a month or so later, and that was it. And then it's just journeyed and snowballed from there, and just keep going along and living it.
Yeah, and you do live it, and you're just so generous with your knowledge and time, and always there to help people that want to change, particularly I know men who are struggling.
Yeah.
And I love the fact that you've got a full-time job, Darren, but you're just always going to make time for low carb Melbourne peeps and anyone else that wants to help. And because you've lived it, and look what you've come through. It's an incredible story. Yeah,
I wouldn't look if the combination of the 10 or 11 drugs didn't get me, and there'd be nothing for me to come home with if those 10 drugs in my system and come home and do 3/4 of a bottle to a bottle of Jim Beam Black on a Friday night as well, to try and forget or what happened during that week at work. So that would be the situation. So there's to come through it. So I can go, and the best part was I've done a couple of half marathons, and Avi and I did the marathon together. There's no pain that I can go through now when I go to training or do something. There's no pain I can go through now that will ever compare to not being able to walk 100 meters in a shopping center and have to sit down, or the pain I had to go through to wrap myself up in towels to sleep at night because I had 80% psoriasis through my body. Like I would have to take 2 shirts to work, to change shirts halfway through the day because I'd be bleeding. My body was bleeding for psoriasis. That was where it was at the end. So whatever I do now can never compare to the pain of what I went through or what I was. So I just push through now and do it. It's easy for me now.
Yeah. It's brilliant. Thank you, Darren. Helena. Hello.
It's me. Hi. So, I take inspiration from all of you daily, and I can't believe how different my life is now to meeting you guys and low carb Melbourne and low carb in general. So I have I think a fairly typical background of being a working mum of having children, working full time. I was also a cake decorator, so I'd come home from work and do all the kids stuff and the school stuff and the dinner stuff. And by the time it got to the cake decorating stuff, it was 9, 10 p.m. and I'd do that till 1 or 2 in the morning, and then I'd go to bed and I'd wake up at 6:30 and do it all again. And just being tired and not feeling great was just my normal. And another couple of people you've heard so far, I was through my teenage years always been on the overweight side, and had resigned myself by the time I had my kids that I was just heavier set person. Always in an effort to look the best that I could, but I did get to the point that I went to Sydney for work, and I just fit in that seat. It was like, wow, geez, that's getting a bit snug, but could always find something to fit me from some store, and I sort of kept putting it aside. And then I had a bout of some issues with my stomach, and doctors couldn't figure out what was wrong with me. I put it down to something I was eating, because it always seemed to happen after I had certain foods. So after having some tests, and was basically told, look, we don't know what's going on. Next time you have it, ask them for an ultrasound, which for me wasn't an answer. I cut out wheat, and it didn't happen again for quite a long time. And then I thought, you know what, still not losing weight. I'll go and get some blood tests done at my doctor. And they came back, and he told me I had, I was 44. I had fatty liver, non-alcoholic fatty liver. And that was the, wow, I need to do something. That was my wake-up call. And at the same time, we'd been having some conversations with a friend of ours that was a type 1 diabetic. And he was talking about low carb, because my mother-in-law is type 2 diabetic. And she was really unwell. She was looking down the barrel of dialysis. And I started educating myself. And I think, that's a common thing too, like the education that we've all done off our own bat to try and solve our own, to make ourselves feel better and to heal, because we're just not, getting it from anywhere else. Any diet program you want, I've done it. I did Jenny Craig in year 10, and then Weight Watchers, light and easy, like been there, done, and nothing of course worked, and we know now why that doesn't work. But yes, started looking into low carb, and I basically said to my mother-in-law, I'll do it with you, and supported her through that process. And together we lost over 50 kilos. She reversed her type 2 diabetes. My fatty liver is healed. I lost almost 30 kilos. I started running, which was ridiculous. So, 2 years down, almost 3 years down the track, I ran my first marathon last year, fasted. Just stuff that you would never believe. But the big thing is now, because of low carb, I've done a LCHF advisor course with Tim Noakes and the Nutrition Network. I've become an accredited health coach because I want to get the word out. It's like, wowee, how did we not know about this? And I want to help people discover it too. So meeting the fellow LCM admins has been a real blessing, and opening up my life to like-minded people and community has been amazing. So it's a game changer in every aspect of your lifestyle and your social circle, and just an awakening to knowledge and your own health. So I love it. It's been incredible.
Yeah, well, brilliant. And I think what you say is so true of, I've met and talked to so many people in the low carb space, with my podcast and stuff. What a great privilege that is. Everyone has come here through a personal journey. And I think that personal journey is just something you can't replicate anywhere. You can go to a doctor, but if they haven't experienced what you have, it's a different level. And I think that is something that really distinguishes people, and why we're so passionate about it. And we have to, it's one of those things, once we feel it, you can say to your blue in the face, these are the benefits, blah blah blah, but it's like childbirth. Unless you go through it, it kind of, it's like, I can conceptualize it but not really get it. I think that's what makes us all stand out, and why we're so passionate. And I'm not going to, I suppose, just me a little bit. I'm not going to talk about my story too much, but I just a little bit to share that I came into the space very similar to all of you in terms of my own personal story as well. So I was, same, I was a dieter, but I actually thought I was really healthy because I was a personal trainer, and I was eating the guidelines, but I still got sick and was diagnosed as pre-diabetic, and I was very overweight, and, I couldn't figure it out. So, that was 8 years ago, nearly 9 years ago for me. And I haven't stopped, as you all know. I haven't stopped, talking, learning, listening. And it was such a a catalyst for me. It was such a healing body and mind. For me, it opened up my world to a huge emotional eating habit that I'd hidden for so much of my life, and all these other things that I thought I was the only one who suffered from, and I was broken and all this stuff. But for me, finding low carb was the start of opening all those doors, and I'm so grateful for the diagnosis, and then so grateful of finding the people that were able to help me. And I think that's why sometimes we feel like some days I feel like nobody's listening, but people are listening. And I think even if it's just one person, that hears what you're saying and decides to be curious and give it a go, then it's so worth it. So yeah, love it. So the second question I have for you all, and I think if you've just I'm not going to ask any of you, but if I know you've all got something to say here, but one of the things that I'm really passionate about telling people is that there is no one size fits all approach. So low carb has a big umbrella. So in this little group of 6, we have a very, very different eating styles. And I really wanted us to talk about that and get that information out there for people, because I think it's so beneficial when people take the time to really work out what it works for them and why. And I guess the question I have for each of you is maybe a little bit around what is a typical day of eating, but also why, what you went through to work that out for you. I mean, I know we haven't got a huge amount of time, but if there's something you can share around your unique style of doing it and, how it looks for you, that'd be great. So who would like to start? Anyone?
I'll go first. Because I've come from the recipe of the diet doctor through to listen to everything, to being the most simplest person going around. So I used to be the Sheraton. I used to be a chef at the Sheraton. I used to always want to be a chef and a baker and stuff like that. So recipes and everything. Now, starting the low carb, like I said, I did diet doctor and done all the recipes, got all the stuff in, this and that and the other stuff. Now I'm just a straight gone carnivore. About 4 years ago, when I went to the low carb down at a doctor's conference and spoke to Dr. Mason, and I was sort of getting there anyway. So I took it to the next step. So now I'm carnivore. So it's not there's a few different types of carnivore. So it's just a general thing. So maybe a breakfast can be some bacon and eggs for me. If I want to have a bit of a change up, I might have it with a Kransky with it. A chorizo with it. That's a bit of a spice. If I don't have breakfast or I'm not hungry in the morning, I'll have a coffee with some cream in it. Then by lunchtime, if I know I'm not having breakfast, I might even do my own hamburgers up. So buy some lamb mince or some burger mince, chuck an egg in it, and do them. I'll do a batch up and have them in the freezer, so I know where I'm going. I've just been at work this week, so I've had a couple of hamburgers with a couple of eggs for lunch, just plain and simple. And then I'll either have T-bone steak or rump steak, some lamb chops for dinner, alternately, or it could be anything up to if I can get T-bone steak cheap or thing, I'll have it 4 nights in a row, and it doesn't faze me to have the same meal 4 nights in a row. I learned a few years ago, and I forget where I heard it from, is if you change your meal around, or how the old days was, we only had chicken last week, and you've got to have something different each time. Having something different every night and spacing the different types of meals was found to have you have a more of a chance of about 65-70% chance of overeating. So when you do have, we haven't had fish and chips in a while, or we haven't had Nana's pasta for a while, or we haven't had something else for a while, when you do it and have that resonates, you overeat it because you haven't had it for a while. It brings back something else. So I just stick to the plain. It does fantastic. I can go nearly all day sometimes without eating, do my workouts, my routine and that sort of stuff, and still get my 8 to 10 hours sleep a night. No problem with that. And as I've been told most of my life, us men can't multitask. So if I can just get that one meal out and have it sorted in the freezer, I don't have to worry about other things, and my life is less complicated. Put it that way.
Brilliant. And, I think too, as I said, you didn't get to that place straight away.
No.
Like you experimented, you tried different things, and you looked and you learnt and
Yeah.
and then you've worked out what's best for you.
I've done, and everyone knows I've done the bacon fast for 30 days. I did the egg fast for 5 days. I did fasting for 7 days, fasting and training and stuff. So once I got to a headspace where I was comfortable with where I was and I knew I wasn't going to relapse and I could do that, I did these experimental things so that if someone comes to me and says, hey, I'm here in this space, or what's this like, or what is, then I can give the experience, say, look, try this, see how you go with this. This is where this sits. And you can use it and adjust it. And that's what. So now I just find a niche now. So for, 7 months, I think of, every now and again, I'll jump on a scale to see how I'm going or whatever. I've had to for a medical recently. I'm a half a kilo different I was 9 months ago, and I don't count or, anything like that. But I've downsized, so I just don't worry about that anymore. Still doing what I'm doing and still happy doing what I'm doing. So once I get to that space, that's where you want to be, because it is the rest of your life. It's not I'm doing my 8-week, 12-week, 14-week program. I want to get into a wedding dress or a suit by Christmas or something like that. It's not. You can't set that expectation, because when it doesn't, it just weighs heavily on you every day. I'm not there. I'm not there. I'm not there. I'm not there. I want to be there. I want to be there. I want to be there. Well, then that's where we've all been. And that's just not the way to be. Once you can leave that behind, the rest is easy, I feel.
Yeah. Brilliant. Thanks, Darren. What about Helena?
Yeah, I turned the mic off. I was going to say, well, the way I came to it was because I was supporting an elderly person at the same time that I went into it. We literally started by just swapping some things out. So, identifying exactly, educating yourself on, what is a carbohydrate and what, role glucose plays in your system. So you have an understanding about why you're targeting certain foods or eliminating certain foods. And literally just started swapping stuff out one at a time. She didn't count any macros because, not tech savvy, just kept it really basic. I mean, I tracked macros for a bit in the beginning so I could get an idea about what I was eating and why it was affecting me. But after that, I'm not really interested in following a diet plan. So it was literally just what do we eat day to day? How can we tweak it? And like now intermittent fasting is a big part of my routine. So I don't really eat at all. I'm not hungry. I'll go for a run in the morning. I'll eat around 12:30, 1 o'clock, and that'll usually be just a protein and a couple of non-starchy veg. And even then, I sort of classify myself now, 2.5 years down the tracks, as a bit of a ketovore. Like the carbs are quite low, but I sometimes have veggies, sometimes I don't, because sometimes I enjoy them. But you can't. I'm not a huge fan of you must do it this way. It must be under this way. We see questions in the group. People often saying, well, how many grams of carbs should I be having, and when do I eat this and when do I eat that? Because I think we've all grown with this mentality of I have to follow rules of something to make it work. But it really literally is, I've found in my experience, just experimenting with your own body and seeing what works for you. And once you feel better, and that those cravings sort of die down, it's so liberating. As as Darren says, I haven't weighed myself in over 12 months and I really don't care, because I know how I feel and I know what my body's capable of. So you start to wean yourself off that, want to fit into a size X amount of, I want to weigh this much, because it just doesn't, it's not important anymore. But it's part of that psychology around habit and eating and addiction that ties into all of this, really. And even for my mother-in-law, she came off all her medications. I mean, she's a 77-year-old Greek lady, she hasn't changed the way she cooks because her husband would leave her, basically. But she's cut out, all the rice and the potatoes, and that's stuff that was really, she was so sensitive to. So just changing things out and swapping things out and seeing what works for you is the way I've gone about it.
Yeah, that's great advice. I think that's brilliant advice. And I think that getting rid of the rules is a really great freeing thing to do when you've got the confidence to do it. I never counted macros either. Like I when I started back in, 9 years ago, like I know it was still starting then, but there was nothing like there was now. And the doctors kind of just said, don't just swap your food. And that was exactly how I started too. I just kind of went for the first 3 or 4 years, low carbing everything, like I went mad on the baking and, just kind of worked out all the swaps and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, mine has progressed. I'm carnivore just quickly, just like you, Darren, but I went carnivore when I was diagnosed with Hashimoto's 2 years ago. And I'd say I'm 95%, 90% now. And it's so easy. But I'm also a mum of 5 and I've got a family. So, I often get, people sort of saying, well, how do you do that with a kind of, in a family? And, well, mostly I know protein is really optimal for my children as well and my husband. So I'm really relaxed around what veggies and fruit they eat. Well, they certainly have berries and cream. That's kind of their thing. But really they have protein as well. And yeah, so it kind of works. It works for me. I think it's so easy for me, but I didn't get there overnight. And I think that's the thing. It takes time to experiment and yeah, exactly work out what works for you. Gillian.
Yes. So, yeah, I absolutely agree. There is no one size fits all. And the same thing where our own personal trajectory, I'd cycle in and out of carnivore. And sometimes that might be on a day's cycle, like some meals may not have veggies in them. And sometimes I might be carnivore for a week or a month. And it's really, for me, I fully consider myself a reformed sugar addict, and I think lots of us are. I'm interested that there's still debate about whether sugar is addictive, but, that dopamine neurological pathway is the pathway of addiction. So for me, it's a really
the sugar addicts debating that though, isn't it, Gillian?
Quite possibly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but I find fasting and carnivore are just great ways to get back on track quickly. And, and some people claim that just eating berries has got enough sweetness that will set them back on their sweetness addiction trajectory. So, and the other thing is, sometimes there are other things that travel along in perspective. So I work with people who have allergies. I have allergies. My daughter has severe allergies. And so I work with people doing histamine protocol. I also work with, it's primarily women who have lipedema. And that's, as we call it, this is the disease called fat. So it is actually dysfunctional adipose tissue distribution on a person's body, and it's very, very resistant to the traditional weight loss techniques of eat less, move more, work very, very poorly, or it responds very poorly. And of course, associated with that is, a heavy emotional toll for people. It's like, why can't I lose weight? And we find that especially keto is very, very effective, but within this community, we also find that there are lots of trigger foods in terms of just things like inflammation, edema, and pain. It's actually quite a painful condition. So, for subsets of people, often dairy is problematic. And for so many people on keto, it's a stall food. Almond products, I was horrified, and I actually had to go, and this, I'll always obsessively fact check. It's like, no way. Almond products is the omega-3 to 6 ratio is 1 to more than 2,000. And it's like, whoa, because omega-6 is traditionally considered to be pro-inflammatory. So it's like, so all this swapping out that we do in the early days of swapping out grain for almond meal. And then, eventually we'll come to a point where it's sort of like, and I guess for me, I always like that little bit of detective work. And I'm always very sad when I see people, especially they'll climb onto a forum and say, keto didn't work for me. That's just rubbish, la, la, la. And I sort of think there's a missing piece for that person. And I'm so sad for them that they didn't discover what that missing piece was. And it might have been that they had a food sensitivity and dairy needed to go, almond products needed to go. For so many of us, artificial sweeteners, and I cycle in and out. Sometimes I try really hard to stay away from sugar, but I love sweetness, and so sometimes I'll cycle into having a bit of artificial sweetener, and then I'll get to the point of going, nah, I think this has got to go. I like stevia, or I call it the least worst option of the artificial sweeteners. They're not fabulous, and I think, again, it's there's a range for everyone. There's this purist point where, and you've had to be at this place, Tracey, and I've had to be at that place. Anyone who's tried to do those 2 layers of both low carb and a histamine protocol, because quite a lot of green list low carb foods are not great on histamines. So, or that whole histamine reducing picture, because with this whole layers. So some of us had to go really tight food groups and exclude lots and lots of foods. And carnivore is, for me, I think one of the most easy and effective exclusion diets out there, because rather than having lists which take up the entire door of the fridge in the kitchen so that you can remember what you can and can't eat, and that's hard to process. That becomes really, really challenging. It's like, no, eat meat, drink water. And it's really simple. And suddenly you just got rid of all this complexity, and I say this, it's interesting working in a more international community as well, that Melbourne is ground zero. We are the international global capital of allergies. We're the most allergic city in the world. And there are communities around the world that don't deal with the rate of allergies that we have. We know that, those of us who've got kids in school, every class has got a child who's got an EpiPen and an anaphylaxis plan. And you talk to people overseas and they think, wow, this is staggering. So, again, there's some people with a lot of qualifications and a lot of brain power trying to figure out why this is happening. Might have something to do with spraying poison into our food supply, but we're still trying to figure that out. So, yeah, food is either your medicine or your poison.
Mm-hmm. One of the things I loved what you said there is that what was the word you used? I don't think, was it cycling? Yes, I think when you were cycling in and out of things, and I do that too. And I think it's actually really great to get to a place where you feel that you can do that. I often say I have like my base where it's like my reset, like if I've gone out for dinner or, had a birthday party or something and, like I'm not feeling, I might have had a glass of wine or something. And, I love knowing that I can do that reset. And yeah, fasting for me too. Like I don't force fast, but I certainly don't find myself that hungry until, same as you, Helena, kind of lunchtime. But yeah, I just think see that experimenting, being curious, you find what's kind of your base, and then you can kind of, depending on what your issues are, of course, cycle from there. So
and absolutely. And this is a conversation I think, a lot of patients and clients are sort of a little bit taken aback, where I say, this is all an experiment, right? So you've done that experiment. You've just done the high carb experiment probably for your entire life, and it hasn't really worked out. So now we need to put in different inputs, and we're going to do a different experiment. And I want you to give this 6 weeks or at minimum a month and give it a red hot go. And let's I love past testing. You know, let's put down some concrete markers, you know, some biomarkers, and even you can even assess things like your mood, your energy levels, your skin. Like, you know, I look back to photos of myself, and, you know, even for some women who are in that the cycle of polycystic ovaries or ovarian syndrome, you know, you've got the what would be called virilization, because they're starting to run high androgen. So, and part of that is acne. And, you know, the quality of a person's hair. I don't know if this was part of your experience, Tracey, with hashies, is that thyroid problems, thinning hair, low energy, feeling cold, all that type of thing. So, you know, and again, and I think part of the journey universally for us is becoming more aware of what our body's trying to tell us. And, you know, and I think all of us have experienced a time where our body was screaming at us, going, this is not working. Stop doing that to me. I need something different, please.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Let's go with you, Avi.
So I'm a little bit similar, but a little bit different. I have learned that I am not good with fasting, so I've given up that idea. And most days I would eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So most days is 3 meals a day, unless I run so much in the morning that time has come to lunch, then there'll be 2 meals a day. So maybe 5 days a week, I would have 3 meals a day, and maybe 2 days a week, I would have 2 meals a day. And I still love my veggies. So a lot of you are carnivores. I love my meat. I love my veggies. So I've decided that I'm going to have both. So I'm not going carnivore, and I have meat and veggies. And so what a typical day for me is, I would have 3 eggs and maybe some cabbage and cheese for omelette breakfast. And I've learned that 3 eggs is much better than 2, and that will keep me full until lunchtime. And I don't snack between breakfast and lunch. Lunchtime is usually a leftover meal with meat and veggies, sometimes roast meat, and sometimes with stir fry. And in the afternoon, sometimes I would sneak in a snack, and that's something that I have to work on. Sometimes I eat nuts and then I can't stop. So I'm very honest that we are still working on it, and I am not perfect. So I just have to tell everyone that's going through the journey, you go in and out, sometimes low carb, sometimes keto, but sometimes there's still cravings, and I would sneak in the nuts and I can't stop. And that has happened the last 2 days. And today I haven't eaten the nuts. And it's a practice, and it's still an ongoing journey, and it's still learning process. And dinner is usually pretty good. Dinner is meat and veggies, and I would have a couple of dark chocolate squares as a dessert usually, and that's a typical day. So I have learned that I'm not going to try fasting most days, and I'm self-compassionate on myself, and I've learned what works for me and my family. And my weight is stable. I feel fine. Exercise is working well, and I feel like I have good energy, not much brain fog. So there's still things to work on, and just so to know that we are all not perfect. Sometimes I have a craving. Sometimes the kid has sweets, and I would have a bit of pavlova, a biscuit, and it's got a bit of sugar, and I have to tell myself it doesn't matter. Every now and then you can still sneak in some sweets, so it doesn't have to be perfect.
Yeah. So I think just a couple of things from that, you know, your honesty is something that I do love about you, Avi, one of many things, because I think, you know, just sharing that humanness of us all. Yeah, of course, we're all perfect. No, we're all perfectly imperfect. None of us are perfect. And I think, you know, that resonates. That story is very, very, very common. You do kind of fast if you don't really snack. I mean, there is a fasting there. I think people think of fasting as this, you know, always this extended sort of pushed fast. But I think, you know, the optimal is going from dinner to breakfast, not eating, and then trying to stick to 3 meals a day is the perfect fasting, really. I also wanted to say with your snacking and things like that, I just love the way that you're honest about it, and that you say how, you know, it might happen a couple of days, and see how you, exactly like you were kind of saying, Gillian, because I do that too. I get caught up in, having this, I might have made something for the kids, and then I might have it for a few days, and then I kind of feel, oh no, you know, that's enough now, and you know, it's a reset again. And I do think that's normal human behavior, and there is very little point in beating ourselves up about it. It doesn't mean anything about who we are as a person. And we can reassess and readdress and reshift back to however we want, whenever we choose to. So yeah, love that.
I just know I had, sorry, I was on that.
Yeah.
Like I've come, like my first couple of years, I would be so strict. You know, Dr. Fecht, he called me the keto ninja, and I was just over the top. It was because I was afraid of a relapse. It was afraid of, if I had that one piece of whatever, it was my self-doubt and my thing that I couldn't have it. Well, now it's like the other week, you know, the family wanted Thai for dinner. Instead of, you know, I said, yeah, I'll have it. So I had my green chicken curry that I used to love, with heaps of chilies in it, and pet mak mak, which is very, very hot in Thai, but I don't have any vegetables in it. But I know the consequences of that the next day is you're going nowhere, out of the house for the next day. So I understand where it is, so I understand the consequences, understand what it is, and I come to the balance of saying, yes, I'm going to have it, but I know I'm not going anywhere for, we know why, what reasons why, the next day. It's not as if I can go somewhere the next day, because my body's just changed and gone to so much stuff. And once I reintroduce something, I know where I am the next day, and it's not a happy place. So I just know it, you know, and that's the thing, and that's the beauty of it now that we've all come to. Whether you're 1 month in the journey, 3 or 5 or 7 years in the journey, you know the consequences. Like Helena was saying, she knows what happens when she has something, or, you know, that's the thing. And that's what we've got to help everybody with. I think that's the best part about it.
Yeah, I so agree. And I also think, you know, like you say too, oh, sorry, Helena, can I just mute you for a second? That well, you know, when you do find what works for you, it's okay. You know, if it's different from somebody else, I love how you say, you know, I like my veggies and I'm eating my meat and that works for me. And great, you know, I don't need you to be carnivore because I am. I'm very much, you know, I think we all need to kind of respect each other's choices and do whatever works for us. And, you know, we can sit in that comfort of being comfortable with the choices we make. We don't need to justify it to anyone or anything like that. So I just wanted to highlight that too, because I think that's really, really, really important. Helena, did you want to add something?
Yeah, I was going to say, related to that I think, you know, there's a lot of people feel a lot of judgment from others in their choices. I know, since having been on this journey, I know that when I'm somewhere, people are a little bit careful about what they put on their plate in case there's judgment from me. But the thing is, you know, what you learn after being on this journey, and you start to heal and you realise what health really feels like, is that it took you 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years to get where you were. It's not going to be an overnight fix. So that self-compassion is really important. You know, I recently broke a cashew addiction, Avi. So, you know, I know where you're coming from, because it's like, well, you know, over time you lose your appetite and your cravings for certain things. But habits are hard to break, and nothing is perfect. So we're all a work in progress. And this is why it's a lifestyle, really. It's not, you know, low carb, keto, carnivore, it's not a 6 to 8 week program. This is something that's long-term and becomes a sustainable, you know, journey to better health. You keep striving, keep experimenting to see what works for you. But yeah, and you've got to, it's a good idea to try and lose that judgment you have on yourself and be patient and have that compassion. Definitely.
Gillian, did you want to add anything before I bring in Declan again?
I guess I'm really interested especially I see part of the debate is a person has a particular way and they want to bring in a friend or relative, and this person must do it their way. And I'm always quite wary of that I think I always try and meet a person where they're at, and I try and have as big a toolkit as I have of options for them. So if you want to do it this way or do it that way, and and I am an ambassador for that sugar movement, and a starting point for so many people is you've just got to get the sugar gone. And I guess in parallel with that, if a person can try and get the amount of processed foods minimized or just reducing them over time, that can be the first part of a journey. I've known people who've got, multiple litres of sugar sweetened beverages being consumed every day, and especially when their partner, that partnership of sugar and caffeine is a powerfully addictive combination. So sometimes the first step is just let's look at the fluid intake and what's coming in that way, and we're not going to worry about the rest of it just yet. So I guess it's that thing, self-compassion, but also compassion and understanding for others. For some people, like I said, that first exposure I had to low carb of, wow, strawberries and cream for breakfast, that's freaky decadent. If somebody said to me at that point in time, go carnivore, it would have been just a few too many steps too far, and I would have just found it mentally too confronting. So sometimes we've just got to step it out. Some people just want to go all in, and that's great. And some people just need to step it out and take it at their own pace.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. I think that's fantastic advice. Couldn't agree more. Now, Declan, we had a bit of a glitch when you were chatting. Let's see. Oh, sound good. Yay.
Oh, fingers crossed. Yeah, so day to day for me, I usually start the day with bacon, eggs, and saganaki and a coffee if I have time in the morning. But I'll be honest, a lot of the time I don't plan very well ahead with my food, especially cooking for myself and my partner. I've started getting pieces of beef brisket and just slow cooking them in the slow cooker in the morning, just throwing them in with a bit of spice and putting the lid on and leaving it. And that's usually pretty easy, But I started off cooking a lot of the Diet Doctor recipes and trying to substitute everything and doing low carb baking, and it was really expensive, and I realized it wasn't great for the budget. So now I just eat fairly simple beef, eggs, some dairy and cheese. I drink water mostly, and I actually have being on the road as a sales rep all the time, trying to find lunch. You think it would be difficult, but it's actually really easy for low carb. I've got a reusable plate and some cutlery in my car, and I love just getting some grilled meats from different restaurants when I'm on the road. There's always something nearby. And what I find is Coles, the roast chicken, they also do brisket sometimes, or beef roasts or pork roasts, and they have the sauce separately. Getting one of those and eating it in the car is pretty easy. So that's usually what my default to. Otherwise, I just barbecue things most days and have the occasional low carb veggies when my family cook me a low carb salad. And yeah, and then of course, like everyone, I'm human too. Every now and then we have some sort of birthday or event happening. I'll enjoy some food when I have that happening. And then I just go back to carnivore most of the time as well to try and get myself reset like everybody else. So yeah, beautiful, and so good to know you're human too, because I think it is funny, but I think most people get the perception that people like us are just perfect all the time and we never deviate, and it's not true. It's not true for me, and it's clearly not true for each of you, but I think it is a matter of looking at your specific circumstances,
finding what's going to work for you and just blocking out what everybody else is doing and focusing on you. Declan, do you want to finish? Oh, yep, no, we're all good. I think it's time to wrap it up. As much as I'd love to talk to you all night, it's probably time, and we all need to go back to our families. But do you want to start with you, Declan? Just a few brief bits of advice. How would you like to end? What would you like to say?
First off, don't be so hard on yourself for the choices. If you make a mistake, you can always get back on it. So occasional slip up is fine. Don't criticize yourself too much. Just keep eating the best you can. And try, if you haven't been so familiar with cooking a lot of new recipes, get into it, get involved, find things that you really like to cook, and get comfortable with making those regularly. And that'll really help you enjoy low carb.
Brilliant. Thanks, Declan. Helena?
My piece of advice would be to try and find your community. I think any lifestyle change is a lot more comfortable when you're surrounded by like-minded people and you have that support, like when you have questions. If you want to, bounce off your ideas off people that know what you're going through rather than feeling isolated and ridiculed and judged, which unfortunately a lot of people do tend to feel that way. Low Carb Melbourne is one of many communities that you don't have to be vocal. A lot of people I know just sit and watch on the sidelines and, take things on. And, there's lots of groups out there, but try and find that tribe that you can connect with and it'll make your journey a lot easier.
Yeah. Great tips. Thanks, Helena. Darren?
Yeah, along the same lines, I've always say you need to first fix what's above the mouth and control what goes in the mouth. So that's a thing that, it's just eating the right foods. It's got to work hand in hand of why you were there in the first place. And, look back around and if you've known anybody who's an ex-smoker, ask them how many times it took them to stop smoking. And if someone tells you it was the first time cold turkey, I think they might be lying to you, or they're lying to themselves. So, or an alcoholic, we're carboholics. It's not going to be the first time. It's not going to be cold turkey. Get that out of your mind. Work hand in hand with your above the mouth, and the rest will flow for you. Because there's no good doing one without the other. You're just going to fall back into old habits again.
Yeah. Yep. Brilliant advice. Thanks, Darren. Dr. Avi?
I would like to say there's always more to learn. There's always more to see. Once you think you know something, it might not be right, and there's always more that you can learn about it. The more you search, there might be new ideas, and it might be a little bit different. You might have to unlearn what you've learned for many, many years, and then learn new thinking, and then that might suit you more, and then you can adopt a new way, and there's always more to see.
Beautiful. Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. Thanks, Avi. Gillian?
I'd absolutely affirm everything that's been said collectively here. I guess something I'd add to it is don't hesitate to seek professional advice. And I know those of us who are health practitioners, it's really hard to treat yourself because we have little blind spots. And I know those of us who work in this space is not only do we have our own knowledge, but we've got the cumulative knowledge of everyone that we've worked with and, helping them solve the puzzle of finding that missing piece, the thing that's just not working for them. And don't be afraid of seeking a second opinion. And I have to say, I've got so much respect, especially I think it's particularly challenging for GPs, and kudos to Avi and her colleagues who are low carb, because I recognise that you're swimming against the tide, and certainly 10 years ago, I think the tide was a lot stronger. It's starting to turn. But there's amazing knowledge out there, and, connect with this knowledge. It's a worthwhile investment because it's our health and our happiness and our future that exists within our mind and our body.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll add a last bit of my little tips. And I think from me, I would say trust yourself, trust your instincts, trust your wisdom, because we've all got that little knowing inside of us. And I think in terms of your day to day, I would say what I find really, really helpful to share with my clients is look for little opportunities to get off automatic pilot in your day, because most of what we eat and most of what we do is just automatic pilot. And if we don't assess that and take a moment to reflect on whether that's actually working for us, asking those questions, then we will just keep doing the same things over and over again. So that's probably my biggest tip, is try and get off automatic pilot, ask the questions, and have the courage to say, no, it's not working, and try something different. So what a fantastic chat. I've loved it. Thank you so much, not just for coming tonight, but for being such great friends and supporters and being a part of, obviously, Low Carb Melbourne. And thank you. It's been wonderful.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Tracey.
Yeah, thank you. It's always fun.
Thanks, everyone. We could chat all night.
Bye.
Good.
Good.